Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast, the second best hockey podcast in Nebraska.
And now I want to know what the
Insider
first.
joke for those who haven't seen this new series on Disney Plus, I guess.
Yeah, people need to be watching. Now like I was about to say there. Now I want to know what the first best hockey podcast is in Nebraska. But yeah, for those of you who were fans of the original Mighty Ducks movies back in the day, I think you might enjoy the new series Mighty Ducks Game Changers on Disney Plus. We watched the first episode. Bridget and I did. I know that you, Jolene, and the girls watched the first episode. It was a lot of fun. Just like the Mighty Ducks movies, just kind of silly, ridiculous fun. But I thought the episode was great, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. Just kind of one of those fun sports movies, obviously geared towards youth, but I think adults will enjoy it as well. So yeah, we're not sponsored at all by Disney. Although if we were, that would be
I was just
that
going
would
to
be
say,
awesome.
our check better be in the mail.
So you might want to check that out if you're a Disney Plus subscriber.
So let's talk about. I don't want to. Talk about the first round game for Omaha making the tournament, playing Minnesota.
Well, it was exciting to be back in the tournament for the first time in 6 years, and obviously really interesting circumstances this season. We only played a 24-game season. Um, you know, one of the things, 2 years ago when we started this podcast, it was a particularly rough season, and obviously the questions come up about when's the team going to turn it around? When are they going to make the NCAA tournament again? And I got some interesting DMs from people who were kind of in the know. They weren't like really connected to the program, but they talked with such bravado, and they told me we were going to become this kind of slow it down team that liked to play 1-0 games and trap in the neutral zone. And they told me it was going to take till like 2024 before we would make the NCAA tournament again. So just to start off here, I am so happy we finished top 4 in the conference and we got to the tournament. So that conversation about when are they going to make the NCAA tournament again is over. They made the NCAA tournament again, and they, ended up out in the West Regional in Loveland, Colorado. And as we talked about on last week's podcast, I think we both liked this matchup going in against Minnesota. Obviously, Minnesota was the number 1 seed in this regional. We were the number 4. The other 2 seeds, you had Mankato as a number 2 seed and Quinnipiac as a number 3 seed. But I think we felt pretty good about this game against Minnesota going in, right?
Yeah, and I think that all the number ones are now like none of them made the Frozen Four.
Right.
Spoiler alert. So, it's not like the team was unbeatable, right? And I
Right.
think that Minnesota State proves that after us
Yep.
is that Minnesota was primed to be beaten. I think what it comes down to is just execution
Yep.
for UNO was not there, and that's the part for me that's just it's tough to swallow because I really felt like the team deserved more. They had a they had a good season. I think that they overperformed expectations. We've talked about that, that they kind of went in looking at, a bottom 3, certainly bottom 4 team. Like most people didn't expect them to be top 4. I don't know anyone that probably expected them to be top 4.
Right.
So that was a huge accomplishment, but then I just wish that the game was closer, and it's just, it's just the way it is. You've got Minnesota that's a high-powered team. You have to realize that this has to be your best game, and I don't know if it was nerves or ego or what, but the team just didn't seem like they came with their A game.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And like you said, I don't know if it's it's one of those things. Like yesterday, I was going with the theory that they just weren't ready for the game. I don't necessarily know that that's true. It's really tough when you are in a conference like the NCHC because obviously everybody talks a lot about how tough the conference is, and certainly this year with the way that it was structured, UNO played North Dakota 6 times, which North Dakota going into this tournament really, was the top team the country as far as I was concerned. And so you play the final 4 games of the season against North Dakota. And obviously, we only won 1 of 4 of those games at North Dakota, the final game on March 5th of the season. And now, when I say win, it was a win in overtime. So I guess that would be 55% of a win based on how the NCAA is weighting things this season. So, obviously we went 1-3 in those final 4 games, but because it was against North Dakota, in some respects, I think that could kind of get a team and get the fan base, quite honestly, into this false sense of security, because it's like, well, it's North Dakota. 3 of those games are on the road at North Dakota. So, I mean, what do you expect? But we weren't going really into the NCAA tournament kind of on a swing where we had a lot of momentum, or excuse me, the NCHC tournament. And it's just one of those situations where, we play the first round of the NCHC playoffs. We're the higher seed. We're the number 4 seed playing Denver, who's the number 5 seed. And we end up losing to a team that's got kind of a hand or two tied behind their back because of COVID, and they don't have their whole roster. And we end up losing a close game, 5-4 to Denver. And so going into the NCAA tournament, though, I was thinking, there's always some question as to how good the Big Ten is from year to year. And I actually, and maybe I was lulled into a false sense of complacency. I thought that they were going to do really, really well out of the gate against Minnesota. And, it's just one of those things, having been alive, 48 and a half years now. I mean, some days, you're the bug, and other days you're the windshield. And I think in this instance, we were kind of the bug. We got down 3-0 in the first period, and it was just really, really hard to recover from that.
Yeah, we had our opportunities. It wasn't, we weren't completely out of it.
Right.
I think back to, when UNO played Boston in their first,
Yep.
Their first appearance in the tournament. I remember watching that game going, how nice it was to let Omaha in, but you didn't stand a chance. Like, it was like, I mean, Boston let up in that game and still walloped us. And obviously, that's long before I came here and started following Omaha and stuff. So,
and so
I'm used to seeing Boston play Denver and North Dakota, and so it was an entirely different product, right? And that's okay. Like, you got in, you made it. That's the building block for your program at that point in time, to say, like, we're capable of playing at this level, and hopefully the guys can realize that they're capable of playing at this level, and look back at what they did against North Dakota. You talked about it in one of the other podcasts about the lack of interconference play this season and how that kind of affects their decisions on who to let in. But I wonder if it didn't affect the teams as well, because I don't look at any team in the Big Ten and say that they play a similar style or have, a similar lineup to what Omaha has. Right. So to look at film on Minnesota this year and say, okay, how are we going to, what did this team have success because they play a similar or have a similar, skill set? What did they do to be successful against Minnesota? Like, you kind of have to just look at it and say, okay, well, we think this is going to happen, and we, this is what we wanted. This is our game. This is what we want to play. And I just think that's hard, because in prior seasons you could look at how they played another NCHC team, or how they played another maybe a Hockey East team that plays a similar style or something like that, and at least get some glimpses into what you need to be aware of and successful at. And we just weren't, and we didn't move the puck well. We weren't quick with our decisions. It's one thing that when we beat North Dakota, the one thing that I've noticed with this team is they make decisions quicker. They don't hold on to the puck too long. They don't try to do things that are low percentage plays. And that's what we kind of got into. When we got 3 down, it was a lot of low percentage plays into the zone. It was a lot of almost playing into their hands,
Yeah.
and then you just can't come back from that. Like we get one and you start thinking, okay, well maybe, right at the end of the first, like, all right, well you're down by 3, you're going into the second, or down by 2, going into the second. Maybe, maybe there's something there. Maybe, maybe this is our spark, right?
Right.
And then Minnesota shuts the door on it real quick in the second. And
Yeah.
then they just roll after that. Like they put in 3 more and it's just a ball rolling down the hill at that point in time. You just weren't going to stop it. And I knew after that 4th goal, I was like, a minute into the second period, and I'm like, yep, we're done. Like, I just don't see us, changing our game enough to find success, outside of some crazy breakdown.
Right.
So it's just a shame because I don't think the final score really represents the quality of team that UNO's put on the ice. And the question for me is, the guys that are coming back. Go back and listen to one of our old podcasts where we talk about whether or not the seniors will be back because they're given that extra year of eligibility from the NCAA. But it's a question of, is this a fluke year, or is this the start of that consistent performance where we're a top team in the NCHC and competing for a slot in the tournament? Or can we ever become one of those top seeds? Can we ever be a number 1 seed in the tournament, and be able to play a AIC instead of a Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's always the potential for that. I think, though, that there are some interesting questions coming out of the season. One of the things that I brought up ad nauseum, which I know nobody wants to hear again, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because it's I stay on message here, is the fact that of the 24 games that we played this season, we got to play 17 of them at Baxter Arena. And yes, I know the games in December were technically neutral site games, and as it regards, the NCAA season records and whatnot. But, UNO under Mike Gabinet, since he took the reins, has been a strong team at Baxter Arena. In particular, their first season, I think it was kind of the record we had at home. It was kind of upside down on the road. So we've been a really, really strong team at Baxter Arena. I mean, you look at the first half of the season versus the second half, the January 1st part. The second half of the season, in those games that we played, those NCHC games that we played, down the stretch, we went 4-3 at Baxter Arena, and we went 4-3 on the road. And so we were, pretty consistent in that regard. We finished the regular season 8-6, but if you look at the last 6 games this season, we were outscored 28-13 by our opponents. And to me, that I think is probably the biggest concern, Jason. I mean, I think, we still gave up an average of about 3 goals per game this season. It's something that I'd like to see, is more consistency, especially going into March, going into that postseason, regardless of where you are in the standings. I'd like to see the team play kind of a tougher, more disciplined brand of hockey down the set stretch. And certainly, like you said, we were good this season, but the question is, were we good enough this season, or was it an advantage, like we talked about during all those podcasts that we did during the pod? Wasn't it an advantage to them playing, a game every couple of days? Did it help keep the team on their toes? Did it help keep our opponents off balance? Is that where UNO really shine? And do they need to advocate that we play an entire 36 game season next season over the course of 2 months? It's one of those, it's kind of an enigma. It's hard to tell this season. Obviously we didn't get, much of a look at St. Cloud and Minnesota Duluth this season. And both of those teams are in the Frozen Four right now. So I don't know. It's an interesting kind of thing. Like you said, I was hoping that they would do better against Minnesota. And as you mentioned, that first appearance against Boston back in 2006, when Jason didn't live here, and he was probably one of those other college hockey fans who was like, God, why did Omaha get in this thing? As he watched that game, that was an interesting game.
Where's Omaha again?
That was an interesting. You know what? You didn't have to sit for 3 periods behind, or I guess it would have been 2 periods behind the UNO goaltender during that 9-2 game. But what's interesting about that game is that it was tied 1-1 after the first period. That said, you could just tell in that game as I was watching it, even though it was tied after the first period back in 06, you could just tell that UNO was on their heels and it was going to be a tough
Yeah,
matchup. And that's the way that I felt this way with Minnesota, despite the fact that they were down 3-1 after the first period and there was plenty of time to come back. I just kind of felt like they had run into a buzzsaw. It didn't feel like it was going to be their game for whatever reason. And I don't know why that. I don't know if it's because they were the last first round game of this all these regionals and they had a chance to watch all of the other games and see teams like Wisconsin get upset by Bemidji and see other teams, get knocked out because of COVID. So it's one of those things. It's a difficult thing. As you also mentioned, because we didn't have interconference play, we were scheduled to play Michigan this season. So if we'd played Michigan, we might have had a better barometer of how we might have matched up against Minnesota
right.
in this type of scenario,
Yeah. So, it is what it is. And, I think we move forward from this. The guys have the team as a whole has a lot to build upon and say, hey, we're capable, we're able. The question comes down to execution. And I know coaches talked about this. We've attended practices in the past and stuff. And so even years ago when we were able to attend practices, I could hear him on the ice talk about execution. And he's talked about it in press conferences and stuff about, at this level, it's about being able to do what you say you want to do, in the
right.
face of adversity. And the guys overcame a ton of adversity with this season, with everything with COVID and stuff. And I thought it was funny because I was talking to a recruiter at one point in time, a scout, and he had said, his biggest complaint about college hockey over recruiting like midget major guys from Canada and stuff is that it takes them a while, like seasons, 1 or 2 seasons, to get used to the, every third day format that AHL, NHL have, because they're used to just playing back to back and then having 6 days.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know why it's such a challenge for them. But you know what? You look at Omaha, and I would say almost to a T, like our guys played better in that kind of format.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they did. They did. That was the crazy thing. I think that pod format really helped them to start the
yeah,
season.
I think when they get rolling now, from a coaching standpoint, I would say for me, how do I instill some of that into my program? Because I got to anticipate that we'll be back to the normal schedule come this
Yep.
fall, where we're playing Friday, Saturday, and then we're off. But what can I do with my team? If you usually have a Sunday off, like if we play Friday, Saturday, and your off day is Sunday, I might consider not making my off day Sunday.
Right.
Keep that adrenaline going, work on things when it's fresh. I don't know, I mean, I trust Gavnet. I think that he's been a great coach for UNO. He has a plan. He's obviously talking to the guys about doing the little things and doing things right, and so I trust that him and his staff will bring the guys through this and stuff. But a lot of it's going to be, what team do we have left next year, and a lot is going to be is this a bad taste? Because hopefully these guys realize that this sucks. You don't want to lose in the tournament, let alone lose 7-2, and all you can do about it now is to use lines from the movie, come back next year and wear the whole dang thing, right? Like,
Right.
you can sit here and say, we'll try to be better, and it was a good season and we did our best, or you can sit here and say, no, we're better than that, and we're going to show you next year.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the question is, are you content with just having made it
Right.
to the NCAA tournament, or do you want to go out and prove that you're one of these teams that can really compete in the NCAA tournament? And I think that starts, obviously, it starts with playing at a consistent level week by week by week, and not, digging yourself a hole in the first half of the season like you were talking about, where there's 6 days, 7 days between games. Um, with the 2-game series format, which, like you said, I'm assuming that we'll go back to this fall. I don't see any reason why we won't. Um, the other thing that I think is important too is that look at the teams that made the Frozen Four, and look at a team like Minnesota Duluth, which is a team that we've all been talking about the past few seasons. They are a team that a lot of times during the season they don't necessarily look spectacular, but they're the kind of team that they're a team that's able to kind of pivot on a dime. They're the type of team that they can play you in a 6-4 kind of horse race game, but they're also the type of team that can grind it out, for a 1-0 win. And as we saw in their regional against North Dakota in the 5 OT game, they were the type of team that could just kind of keep going and going and going and going, despite the fact that players apparently were on IVs to get fluids in the locker room between those OT periods and drinking Coca-Cola. So that's what they have to become. I think it's the one thing that I'll say about certain incarnations of the Mav teams under Mike Kemp and under Dean Blaze was the thing is, and obviously we had more of a sample size, but there were certain teams that really had success and they had a lot of swagger on the ice. They had this certain confidence. And that was the one thing that I didn't see in that Minnesota game. It felt like when we got on our heels, we just sort of unraveled a bit and fell apart. And so part of that's the evolutionary process, and part of it's the fact that you've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores
Right.
on this roster
there
right
was
now.
quite a bit of that
Right.
stargazing at Minnesota.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're looking at guys like Mason Nevers and Sampo Rantanen that they're high end talent, right? They're the guys that everyone talks about, and it's like it's almost like we're a tiny bit starstruck, and yeah, that swagger we need to get back. So
yeah, we definitely do.
Should we pick players of the game?
Yeah, let's pick players of the game. It's a tough game, tough circumstances to do that with, but I think we should pick a player of the game. And I
will say that for consistency, back to your point about consistency and that stuff, our top line, those three guys, consistent.
Right.
Conley, consistent.
Yep.
Like from the first day of the season to now, we got out of them what we expected.
Right.
I think Ward's issues, because it wasn't, I think people need to remember, like it wasn't until probably midway-ish through the pod that coach jumbled the lines and put Ward and Weiss together.
Yep.
And that's what really with Primo. So that's really when that kind of clicked, and those guys have been a threesome since then, and they've been productive, and they were productive in this game. Do you want the easy one? Because I think there's, to me, like I looked at it saying there's just two. I mean, it's
I'm gonna take the easy one. Just sorry, Jason, because you like to take the difficult one, but I'm taking Taylor Ward, who seemed during that entire game, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but it felt like he was a guy who was like trying to take the team on his back and sort of, pull them back in the game. You know what I'm saying? And he was, I think, I felt like, there was no question he was the best performer for UNO this last weekend. There were a couple of other guys that I liked on the game, but he definitely was. Look, he's one of those guys where we felt like he had a season that was a little bit more quiet, but he was just, again, a consistent performer, like you said, this season, and certainly been one of our most consistent players over the past 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think that was certainly one that had to get mentioned. I think Weiss is the other one. I mean, he was on the puck. He was controlling it, which is what you need from him. You need him to start the cycle, to keep it going at times. You don't look for him to kind of finish. You look for him to engage. And the unfortunate thing is that when you're down 6-1, he got to the point, I don't know, we were probably down 4 or 5 one at that point in time, that he started to try to just do too much. He's got this incredible skill, but he was trying to do it a little bit all of himself. But he was one that I thought, that's just a product of the game. Like at that point in time,
Right.
you need a goal, and if I've got to try something, like I who cares that I lose it?
Yeah, at that point in the game, you know what? I don't have a problem with that at all. It's like try to make something happen, see if you can get a little spark, see if you can get a quick goal. Yeah.
I think the back end, I think our D, I really expected more out of them. I
Right.
think Scanlon was the one that, if I was going to lift up one defenseman, it was probably him.
Right.
And I don't know, the Seville, I just don't know, like, at first I was kind of like, well, it's not his fault. The D's just not really helping him out, kind of left him out to dry. And then some of those started to go in, and I'm like, oh man, that's not the D. That's just you not focused. And so, I don't know, that one was rough because you really want him to perform better in a game like this. But I would say for my star, I would go with Weiss, just because him and Ward worked well together, and it seemed like every good opportunity we had, those two were involved in it.
Right. Yeah, and I those are the two that really stood out to me as well. And I think the past few weekends, Tyler was one of the players who, in that Denver game and in that final game up at North Dakota on March 5th, I felt like he was one of the standout players both of those games as well. Like you said, sometimes he tries to do too much, but hey, rather do too much than too little. It's one of those things, and like we were talking about defense and the goals against situation. 3 goals against average this season. That's obviously something that has to improve. We talked about UNO on special teams this season. We talked about them on the penalty kill, and as you said, Jason. Or I don't know. I don't even know why I threw that, as you said, Jason, in there. I don't know why I threw that phrase in there at all. Just as everybody's talked about, we had a really, really solid looking penalty kill throughout much of this season. And I think that stronger, tougher defensive play is what needs to come back, because ultimately, how the team plays in front of our netminders is really, it really has a big impact on how they do in particular. But you look at some of the great goaltenders that we saw in the NCAA tournament, some of these Richter finalists and whatnot, and obviously in our regional we saw 3 great goaltenders: the Quinnipiac goaltender, McKay, who was the Minnesota State Mankato goaltender, and then LaFontaine, who was the Minnesota goaltender. Those were 3 fantastic goaltenders, and in particular that Mankato Quinnipiac game, you saw those goaltenders make great save after great save after great save to keep those teams in the game. So we kind of have to have one of those, really solid kind of performance, especially when you get into the NCAA tournament. I remember Ryan Massa back in that 2015 regional and how he played. And that made a big difference for the team, especially because there are going to be points during these games where everything's on the line. And this is the big tournament, the big deal. Everybody's trying to win. Everybody's giving their best game. Everybody's got to be able to step up and get that done. So anyway, it was just one of those things. Like I said, they just kind of ran into a buzzsaw on Saturday night. It was late. It was in Colorado. We don't really do well in the northern part of the state. We do okay in the southern part, but yeah, Denver North, it's not our thing. I don't know if it's the thin air or whatnot. You went to school in the northern part of the state, so you're very familiar with that area.
Oh yeah, and we go to Eagles games all the time there.
Yep.
At the Bud, so I'm familiar with the arena. I know that area well.
I would love to have gone to that regional. The first one I met, it looked like, I don't know if you I looked like the Mankato friends and family that were in the building were having a good time. So I am a little disappointed that fans couldn't be there, because I think that would have been a great, fun atmosphere if a bunch of UNO fans had gone out. I think that would have been a great environment.
Well, I will say looking forward, my bracket is busted completely.
So is mine. Now, I did pick UNO to win the national championship. That was a bit of a pipe dream, but I honestly felt good about this regional going in. So I wouldn't have been surprised if they had been able to get to the Frozen Four, but ultimately
Yeah.
that wasn't in the cards. But yeah, mine's totally blown up now. Bridget with her fun bracket, she got 3 of the 4 Frozen Four teams, like we were talking about last night. She had Wisconsin in there, which was wrong, but she had Duluth, Mankato, and St. Cloud in the.
And I think that's the thing that shocks me some is not so much the results as it is the the way that we get there kind of things. Like
Yeah.
Minnesota or Wisconsin surprised me because I didn't think they played well at all in
No,
that
I didn't
game.
either. I
And
didn't either.
I like it was almost that classic arrogance factor to me, which I
Yep.
just think is strange coming out of there. But then Minnesota beats us, but then you know
Isn't
then you
that
run
crazy?
into
I know.
Minnesota State. Like we talked
I
about
know.
this in the selection thing. Like they're 0 in everything.
Yeah.
Where does Minnesota State come from? And you and I
5.
talked
Yeah.
well in our group text,
Yeah, we
right?
talked. Yeah.
Like we talked. I'm like, they got the monkey off their
Off their
back.
back.
Be
Yes.
careful. National title, Minnesota State. I mean, I would never pick it because I still
Right.
can I know getting burned by Minnesota State, but wow, they finally got through it and now they're in the Frozen Four.
It was amazing because watching their first game in the West Regional against Quinnipiac, you're kind of like, I mean, you're just sitting there watching them in that Loveland Regional, and you're like, yeah, they played good. It was great to get that overtime victory, but you're kind of like, after what we saw Minnesota do to us in our game against them, you're like, is Minnesota State Mankato going to be able to stick with them? And they shut them out. I mean, they
Yeah.
beat them. They beat them 4-0. And I mean, I'll be honest with you, that was a really, really impressive game plan that they put together. And they talked a little bit about how Mike Hastings on the Saturday night game had during the middle of the game had decided to switch up the lines on the team because he didn't like what he saw after the first period. And that's what's crazy about this tournament. You think what's going to happen going in, and then you think what's going to happen after those first round games, and then it doesn't. And like you said, like we were talking about, because I said to you, I'm like, so what do you think? I'm like, now that Mankato has the monkey off their back and they finally got that win, because sometimes that can become one of those psychological hurdles. Is it going to open the floodgates? And sure enough, it did. And now I don't know. It's I'm curious to see how they do now that they're in a Frozen Four.
Yeah. Well, and they're going up against St. Cloud,
Right.
Home state rival type of situation, but St. Cloud's playing, really good hockey.
Yep.
I thought their win against Boston was very impressive.
Yep.
I think that it was interesting to see the Boston College game because I still think that Boston College is the better team. I think that they got hurt by not playing a game before St. Cloud, because you've got a top end team in the top league coming in who's sharp and ready to go. And I thought that Boston College made a lot of mistakes that they don't make most of the season. They weren't ready for St. Cloud, and hand it to St. Cloud. They went in knowing that they had to play a game to beat a team that was odds-on favorites from what I saw from most people to win the national championship. And man, St. Cloud put together a heck of a game. So Minnesota State's got to play that, and I don't know. That's going to be a rough game. To be honest with you, I would probably pick St. Cloud getting out of there. I think they're the better team. And I just have been burned by Minnesota State so many times, like it's just hard to pick them, I guess.
It is. And the one thing that you looking at that BC St. Cloud game is that the one thing I'll say about St. Cloud is that obviously they faced a little bit of adversity when Easton Brodzinski went out with the knee injury in that game. But the one thing I'd say, if you look at the teams that made it to the Frozen Four, by and large, it was teams that had to play, games where they had to be very, very resilient throughout that game, mentally resilient during the game. They had to play a perfect game. They had to, go down and block shots. They had to do all of the little things right. They had to play that full 60 minutes, or in the case of Minnesota Duluth and North Dakota, they had to play like 600
120.
600 minutes or whatever. It just yeah, exactly. They just had to how many overtimes was that? 5 overtimes?
It was in the fifth. It was a few minutes into the fifth overtime.
So they played basically 2 full games and gosh, yeah, they did. They played almost 3 full games. Yeah,
that was going on at the same time that the Omaha game was, and I remember Jolene texting the group and saying like, which one ends first? I'm like, there's no way that this goes into so many overtimes that Omaha gets done before the North Dakota Duluth game. But I'm like, well, I'm wrong. I'm gonna go watch the Duluth games.
Well, yeah, and I was fine with that because that kept college hockey fandom focused on a game that was not ours. just as soon that folks not have to witness. Let's just forget
Right.
that ever happened. So yeah, that just kept going, which was kind of a sort of a in a way sort of a poetic moment because Minnesota Duluth did not have to play a first round game because Michigan had to forfeit due to COVID protocols. So I guess
I think they benefited from they get to play their first game gets to be against a team that they're familiar with, like they know.
Very familiar with, and North Dakota's a team
they fully well knew what they had to do, and they had that game. Like how North Dakota comes back in that game just blows my mind that they even get to overtime.
Well,
2 goals in the last minute and a half, and yeah.
And of all the regionals, that was the one that had the most fans, and I do think that electric atmosphere, certainly, I think it helped North Dakota right there at the end of regulation, but I think during those overtime periods, it's what kept both teams going was the fact you had fans standing on their feet. I had so many moments. I mean, man, by the time that 5th overtime came out, their legs were rubber. They looked completely gassed. But yeah, I was saying, resiliency. I think if you look at all these teams that are in the Frozen Four this year, it is. So like you, I would go with St. Cloud making it to the championship game. I guess they're of the other NCHC teams that we watch, they're the one that I probably enjoy watching the most and have enjoyed following the players. We've been up there 3 or 4 times now. I think three trips up there. So it's a really fun trip. It's great to go watch hockey at the Herb Brooks Center, and so I would say that too. But man, the way that Mankato played, the game plan that they put together for Minnesota, who knows? So I mean, we could very well, it would be a shock, but we could very well see that team in the national championship game. So yeah, good for them, good for the WCHA, good for that program. Yeah.
And then the other side of the bracket with, as we just covered, Duluth with the 5 overtime victory over North Dakota, they get on. UMass with impressive games. I think the biggest thing for me is like UMass didn't play a lot of games, and I don't know if it's hard to figure out if they're surprising teams because they just don't know what they're getting against them, or if they're just really sneaky good and they didn't have a chance to showcase it this year. I think that it's a totally different style than what North Dakota plays. And the question for me between Duluth and Mass comes down to, we know Duluth can handle, North Dakota NCHC teams. Can they handle what UMass puts out, on the ice? Can they handle that flow game? Luckily they get some time off, so they're not having to do it after playing a 5 overtime game the night before. But I think that'll be another really good game to watch.
Yeah, it's basically a rematch of the 2019 national championship game, and I don't know. I watched the last 3 UMass games. I watched the Hockey East championship game against UMass Lowell, and it is interesting that UMass, which for years was known as UMass Amherst, decided to rebrand like their Division I basketball team and just go by UMass. I wonder how Lowell actually feels about the fact that they're not using the specific name. But anyway, I digress. The fact of the matter is they had to go through 2 WCHA teams, which, again, I don't after the Mankato thing, I don't know what to make of that. And they pretty much they dispatched Lake Superior State and Bemidji State fairly easily. The UMass Lowell game was a really interesting game. That was a 1-0 game, and UMass Lowell couldn't get anything going against the Minutemen. So again, I don't follow the Eastern teams as much, but this is a team that they would, throughout this season, they were able to rattle off, strings of like 6 wins at a time. So, like you said, I think they kind of have sort of a deceptive game a little bit, and that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see Duluth go up against a Hockey East team. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And again, I don't know which direction to go, but I will tell you the previous 2 seasons of this podcast, I picked Duluth to win the national championship. And the first year they did. Last year, we didn't get to see teams play for a national championship. So I'm not going to go against them this time. So I guess I'm going to have the all WCHA national title game with Minnesota Duluth and St. Cloud State, which could be interesting, or maybe it won't be interesting, but that's what I'm going to go with this time. It's interesting, although it might be interesting to see like a UMass Lowell take on a St. Cloud in that. It's interesting when you don't have a number 1 seed in there, it makes it.
I think one of the storylines they talked about quite a bit after the game, the interview on Sunday, was that Duluth head coach, his son plays for Mankato.
Yep, Ryan Sandlin.
So part of me wants to. I kind of want a Duluth Mankato final. Just to be able to like, the storyline would be kind of funny about dad, trying to win a championship, win 3 straight over his son, or his son trying to upset his dad's, record 3 straight thing. Like
that would absolutely be a great script. And I, like I said, I would be fascinated to see Mankato in that championship game, just because they're a program that UNO has a lot of history with. They're the first road trip we took in February of 1998. We drove up and watched UNO's series at Mankato that year. And one of the best comebacks I've seen for a UNO team. UNO was down 4-1 going into the second night against Mankato, and they came back and they won 7-4. And it was a lot of fun going up there for that series. And they've got the spirit of the Maverick trophy that used to pass back and forth when the teams played on a more, well, it still passes back and forth, but we just don't play them that much anymore. And I remember one year when Bridget was on the Blue Line Club board of directors, she got to be part of the handoff of the trophy to Mankato that year. So yeah, I would, that would be a great matchup. See Scott Sandelin play his son, Ryan Sandelin, and Mike Hastings, a coach that people here in Omaha are very familiar with, a longtime Lancer head coach and an assistant for a short time under Dean Blaze. So that would be great. I'm going with the all NCHC final though, but I'm liking that. I'm liking that script. I'm liking the Duluth Mankato game. So I kind of want to see that now.
Happened. I don't think it's what happens, but I kind of wouldn't be happy with seeing it.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go against you on this one. I think UMass comes in, surprises Duluth a little bit. I think there's a little bit of letdown after such a hard game, plus that injury. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Duluth is a really good team. I expect a really good game. I think I'm just gonna take UMass because I got a feeling. Really, that's all it comes down to. It's like a coin flip here. So you've got Duluth and St. Cloud in your championship. I've got UMass and St. Cloud. Who's your national champion? Duluth?
This is a tough one. Yeah, I've got to go with Duluth. Like I said, when we talked about what UNO needs to do to kind of turn the corner, now that UNO has gotten the NCAA tournament out of the way with the Mike Gabinet regime, now they can focus on doing what's next. And like I said, that the Duluth team always impresses me because they're not always the prettiest team during the season. In fact, this season they had really an ugly loss to end their home season against Colorado College this year. But they're one of those teams that, again, they're resilient, and they're the type of team that they're able to adapt and pivot during games. So I'm going to go with, again, I should have picked them to win the national championship this year. My bracket was just a complete mess after this weekend of games. And so, yeah, I'll go with the Minnesota Duluth to win the national championship. Although it would be cool to see St. Cloud win it. It was cool to see them win the game. So yeah, but yeah. So here you're gonna.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna take UMass to win the whole thing. I think that it's hard to root against an NCHC team in a tournament, but if they can get past Duluth, if my coin flip there is correct, I think that they have that bad taste in their mouth from losing to Duluth, a few years back, and a lot of people doubting them. And I think they've got the talent to do it. So I just, the team's built for it. I just don't know if they can execute. And I'm just going to go say that they can and they'll win it. But they're not going to have an easy road. Like, Duluth's going to be a tough sled, and I think that St. Cloud is going to give them a run for the money. Even with Brzezinski's injury and their game, I got to assume that he's not coming back after that. That knee looked toast. So I don't know. It's really hard, but I think I'm going to lean UMass and see. I'll most likely be wrong. I was wrong on pretty much everything else in this bracket. So if you're looking to make money on this, do not pick St. Cloud or UMass.
Yeah, Jason has a penchant. He, the first year of this podcast, he picked Boston College to win the national championship. The second year, he picked Wisconsin to win the national championship. This year, they both went out kind of unceremoniously in the tournament,
but
and it could be the
both
Jason
considered top end teams. So
yes, it could be the Jason curse here. So my apologies, UMass.
This is why I don't put all my money on games, is because if I'm gonna bet on something, I'm gonna spread it out, because odds are I'm wrong.
I'm not a betting person at all. Like you, part of it's just for fun. Part of it's taking a look at the teams on paper and saying, I think this could happen. But who knows? It could be a UMass Minnesota State Mankato championship game, and that could potentially be a really fantastic game to watch. But regardless, I having been to 2 Frozen Fours, it is a lot of fun, even when your team isn't there. I think I had more fun at the Frozen Four that UNO wasn't at, because we didn't have a bunch of UNO fans there that that kind of jumped on the bandwagon. You could just go and enjoy the games, eat good food, do all that. It's going to be interesting for the people who go because of COVID protocols this year, but anyway, it should be a lot of fun, and obviously stay tuned, because we'll be talking about it on Twitter and on Facebook and everything else along the way. So,
yep.
So we'll see if this is the final episode of this season, if this is the final episode of the Mavpuckcast until fall. I don't know if it will be, if there's some interesting player transaction or player departures here in the next few weeks. We may have to come back and talk about it and talk about how it affects the team. It'll just be interesting. Interesting.
No, we've always done.
Sure. We always do a summer special. Yeah.
Draft, so.
Yep. Yeah. We always like to do a summer special to talk about the team, and I'm sure we will do that this year. But yeah, it'll be interesting.
Stick with us. Enjoy the Frozen Four, and if nothing else, we'll catch you next season, right?
We will catch you next season, and until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.